point. There's never been a time in human existence ever like the present. There's never been a time you could do what was just described, sit down and communicate to people all over the world in voluntary forms in a very information-rich way.
But
It's never
question is,
happened.
well, on net, will freedom increase or decrease in time?
No, that's a very real issue.
That's an issue. Did
different
freedom
forms of
increase or
organization
decrease in
sound
the
to me
previous structures?
less voluntary.
Sometimes it got worse, sometimes it got better. It depended. That's probably going to be true in the future as well.
How much information is currently on the web? I've read that it's getting close to the total amount in the Library of Congress, which is 20 terabytes, 20 trillion bytes of information, and expanding literally geometrically. Is there any sense of what this means, George?
I think it means that there is so much content out there that it becomes extraordinarily important for one to assess the value of that content. So the question of brand, whether it be in commerce or whether it be in health or whether it be in scientific research, becomes extraordinarily vital as people try to validate what they see out on the web.
Bart, what's the economics of the internet? Is it really all free?
There's no digital free lunch with the internet. Every time you send a bit of information, there's a cost associated with it. Historically, the U.S. taxpayer has really subsidized the internet. We continue to do that to some degree. That will change. I think that's a good thing. Otherwise, you would overwhelm the internet. For example, you could have a software agent that goes out and collects information for you, and that agent creates two agents, and each of those creates two agents, and very soon you would crash any internet.
I've seen recently some new ways of dealing with communications, the so-called laws of surfing. How many pages do people visit per visit? How many sessions per hour? New ways of looking at how people utilize information. We all get used to this feeling that if a website doesn't download in 10 seconds, you're going to go someplace else.
You're using the word information. I think you'd be very careful. Information implies some processing of data. What people see on a website is basically data. And to the extent that's turned into information depends on what happens in their minds and other things. I think that's wherein lies the big challenge. There's an enormous amount of data out there. How do you convert that to information that's useful to you?
How about individual choice and the power of the person? Robert, how have you seen that developed?
Well, there are rather trivial things like marketing, and if you want to buy something, people have set up search engines so you can find the lowest price for a product. And I don't know quite what this will do to normal business practices, but I use it, and things cost 20 or 40% less.
But I bet you buy more, though. I do. Gets me all the time.
Well, I don't have to pay for these things because
Oh, that's cheating. Come on.
they're supported by various grants and stuff. I think,
How about for us normal people?
well, I think that's one subject. The other subject is keeping contact with people. That's going to be a very strange thing. I have this feeling, right now we have a mobile society, and you go to grade school, and then you move on, go somewhere else, and I still know one person from second grade and 4 or 5 people from fourth grade. But we learn to make friends. What would happen in the future? Here I have Motorola's little gadget which lets me do email from anywhere. And suppose children have this, and when you're 7 years old you make a dozen friends, and they move away, but you still have them, like I have my children. We may get people who don't bother to form new friendships because you can spend your whole lives with these people that you knew. So that might change something.
Or we may have a richer sense of our past, if indeed we continue to make new friends and maintain that type of connection to the past, which is very important, I think, as far as integrity is concerned, especially as people get older.
Frank, what do you see of how the internet breaks barriers between cultures, between organizations, within an organization? How do you see that?
Well, it certainly led to or accelerated the decline of sovereignty for the sorts of reasons that were indicated, that communications doesn't respect national jurisdictions, and so governments can't regulate it. On the other hand, I guess I have to take a little bit of exception. I mean, we've been talking about some of the advantages, but it does seem to me that in a way, one of the problems of the internet is it encourages a kind of superficiality of human social interaction. A good example of this is your typical Usenet group. You get these so-called flame wars where people are simply uncivil to one another. And part of the reason for that is that unlike a kind of more bricks and mortar kind of human community. You think of, the Jamestown settlement or the Pilgrims, landing at Plymouth, who are stuck with each other, could not get away. Anyone can get into an internet community and get out whenever they want. And in a sense, it doesn't lend itself to the development of kind of shared norms, values, the sorts of things that really bind more traditional kinds of human communities together.
Well, I
This is
disagree with
exceedingly
that.
important. Go ahead.
I disagree with that. I don't like civility. The trouble with insulting somebody in presence is that they'll hit you, and you can't express yourself very well. And generally, I have made many friends on the Usenet news groups whom I've never met, and in many cases I don't hope to meet. These flame wars are wonderful. People tell you what they really think, or else they lie. It doesn't matter. But I think you learn more per hour this way by getting right to the heart of the matter. The polite people are a waste of time. They write all these words, and I usually turn to another screen when that happens.
we know how
Another
to
thing is,
communicate with you.
you're talking about people getting into their own culture, and I don't like cultures. I think cultures are a waste of the human mind. A person becomes a kind of robot because he's a Serb or he's a whatever it is. Everybody says we should respect these cultures, but why should we? And I belong to some scientific cultures on the net, and these are my cultures, and we're very close, and we share ideas much more intimately. Because when you meet a person,
But those cultures are not any more legitimate than the national cultures are.
I don't know. When you meet a person, you look at their face and they remind you of your Uncle Louis or somebody you don't like, and you don't really, I think face-to-face contact is almost impossible to penetrate. When you meet a person and they have a certain posture, then you're dominated by a stereotype. When you talk to the people on the net, you're dominated by whatever ideas they have. It's better.
Yeah, I have some experience. For the last 4 or 5 years, I've been working on how to use the web, not just the net, but the web, for deliberative discourse on complex issues that affect a lot of people. And we've done a series of experiments.
It's the Hyperform?
Yeah, the Hyperform. It's all non-real time. There's lots of information. There's a structure. There's moderators. You type out what your position is in a form that other people can then read it, and then they can comment. Everybody plays by their real name. There's no avatars, no pseudonyms. The bios are known. They're often restricted to a certain group of people that represent a certain community, because people will not open up on a difficult subject if they think journalists or other people may be listening. So there is a way to use the web especially for truly thoughtful discourse. It's extremely difficult to do in our real-time, shoot-from-the-hip society. So one of the conclusions I'm drawing from this empirical research is that it's the hybrid, it's the human interaction with the technology that is powerful. Technology does not really replace and cannot. And that's why
Marvin's saying it's better.
I know it, and I differ. I differ very much with that. I'm concerned that we are at risk with people mistaking completely impersonal communication, especially when they don't even have to be themselves.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're mutually exclusive.
One of the challenges I think we face over the next decade or two, or maybe 3, is to figure out the form of virtual identity versus real identity and the various combinations that they will assume. What I'm seeing now, for example, is that people saying, wait a minute, I want to drive commerce back to the real world. I want to use the internet, not to do my shopping exclusively, but I want to build a mirror of a community on the internet, a local community, so I can drive traffic back to local shops where they want the traffic to come in because they want to sell others. So we're seeing mixes and creative blends of the physical world and real world, which will continue to
Make a comment. There's a downside to this on the issue of civility. You can really hurt somebody badly by defaming them easily on the internet in ways that you couldn't do before in regular media. You say the X beats his wife can take on very different meaning depending on the access that you have. But if Marvin has a new book coming out and a graduate student sneaks a copy of the files and just dumps those files on the internet, what happens to the proprietorship of his bits of information? These are not at all settled questions.
But that's not a new problem. Stealing has always been a problem, and
But it's amplified
we
on the
have
internet.
to find a way to deal with it. But I'd like to challenge that idea of the, I forget how you put it, but the real identity versus the network identity, because I think when you're in the same room with a person, your chance, there is no real identity. You're talking to a person as a salesman, as a member of a religion, as a member of a culture, as a member of a profession. And
Aren't those real factors, though?
well, I don't know what real means. It's the same when you talk to somebody by email. You're communicating with a certain aspect of their personality, and to say that one is real and